welcome back to For the Sake of a Generation podcast. I am so excited for our episode today. I have one of my best friends here with me. Her name is Jenna Mason, and we became friends a couple years ago in high school in our AP English class. Mm-hmm. So it's been so cool, this journey we've been on together for the past couple years. So I'm so excited to have her on to share your wisdom and all the Lord's taught you in the past little bit.
I'm so excited to be here.
I know, it's so exciting. Okay. Jenna's on our team, by the way. So, yeah, this is our first team member interview, which is super exciting. So I want to start off with the question of the podcast, which is if you could say one thing to the next generation of believers, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it's funny because, from the beginning, obviously I've known that was going to be the question. So, I've thought about it for a long time. And I think, simply I would just say sit with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And 6 months ago, the Lord gave me a vision, first time ever. I had never had a vision before. I didn't even know that was a thing, honestly. It was out-of-body experience. But I was standing in worship, and it was me, and to my right was Jesus at a table, and to my left was doors all the way down. And it was me with all this stuff in my hands, and it was Jesus being like, Jenna, come sit with me. It was him in one other seat. It was for me. And he was like, come sit down. I was like, I can't. I'm too busy. I'll get there when I get there. I have all this stuff to do. You see all these doors. I haven't got there yet. I have so many things to do. And so I just, I kept saying no. And it's I got to the end, and every door was open, and I had lost everything in my hands, just laid out, and all that was left was Jesus at the table, and he was like, it's time to come sit down. And I just wept, I sobbed in worship that day, and it was just, so directly, from the Lord saying, it's time to stop running, it's time to stop doing work, it's time to stop striving and doing all these things, it's time to come sit down.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because I had been a believer for 3 years at that point, almost 4, and I had never sat with Jesus before. Everything I did was, for the Lord, but it wasn't with the Lord. It was so performance-based, and so I would say sit with Jesus. Don't just do things because you think you're supposed to, or because it'll get you to a certain point, or because it looks good to the church. Sit with Jesus, and that is where true change comes from.
That's so good. I've heard you tell that story multiple times, but I was getting chills listening to that today. I don't know why, I was just hitting different, but I love that. And I think it's so cool because that's such, we're going to, talk a little bit about your story in a little bit, but I feel like that's so sweet that Jesus did just what you needed, because that to me, knowing your story is so fitting, and it's cool to see the Lord's intentionality in that. He gave you that vision because that was what you needed, and obviously we know that's how the Lord works, but just hearing that over again, it reminded me that there's no better person for that vision than you. And I just love that he was so intentional to go out of his way and not just kind of whisper it in your ear, but give you a full-blown vision for that, because I don't know. It just makes so much sense to me that he did that, and I just think that was so sweet.
Yeah, me too, absolutely.
I love it. Okay, so first I want to talk about your story and your relationship with God, growing up and kind of to where it is now. Just tell us your story, the way you grew up, how you got started with your faith and all that stuff.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy because I grew up extremely atheist, mega major. Nobody in my family believed in the Lord, not an aunt, uncle, cousin, nothing. And my parents were very vocal about how they didn't believe in God, and so I just went with that. When your parents believe something, that's just what you believe.
Right.
Nobody really talked about God other than in a negative manner, and so I just never thought about it. I saw people going to church in school and stuff like that, and I was just they must be crazy, because that's just what I thought. And so I went through my whole life like that, and it wasn't until I got into high school that I met people that would talk about the Lord, and they went to church, and they would I would say something, and they would be well, God's got it, this and that, and I was what does that even mean? I don't even know what that means. I don't even know if I care or anything like that, but I knew it was people either, for the most part, were passionate about it, or they hated it. And so I was what is so crazy about this man that people are so opinionated about this guy in this book? How is it that serious? And so I don't know, I kept I got a TikTok, which is so funny, but I got a TikTok, and the first videos on there were videos about the Lord, and it was so weird. That was my immediate algorithm, I guess that's what you call it. And I was that's weird, because I don't ever watch or listen to stuff like that. And so my freshman year of high school, that's when COVID hit, everybody went home, I didn't talk to my friends anymore, it was really lonely, and I was I have nothing better to do with my time, I might as well just read the Bible, I don't know, might as well. Like, I love to read and I love to learn stuff. So I was like, let's just read the Bible and see. And so I got a Bible and I started reading it. Like, I started in Genesis and I went through to Ezekiel. Like, I was going to go like cover to cover, and it made no sense.
Oh, I bet.
Not even a little bit. Like, I was so lost. But in the midst of that, I started going to this little tiny church in Dallas. My friend invited me. And my first time there, they were like, it was like Bible trivia, and it was like mainly Old Testament based, and I was like, hey, I know that, I know that, I know that. And it like satisfied the perfectionist, like, have to be right in me. So I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm going to come back and do this again. And so I kept coming back to like youth there, and it was so small. It was like me, my friend, like maybe one other person our age, and then like 2 older guys. And I just learned like so much about the Lord, like in those like intimate little moments. Like, it's nothing special. Like, to other people it would be like, that's so boring.
Right.
But like, it was what I needed. Like, I had no human interaction, like literally ever. And so I just learned so much about the Lord. Just like, I just sat and listened. Like, half the time I didn't even talk. Like, I would just sit there and just like listen to these people tell me about the Lord. And it was like a few months after that I was like, I should start like going on Sundays and like actually like committing myself to this. So my mom would take me to church, and I got saved. It was so crazy. I got saved like privately by myself like probably 5 times because I didn't believe that it was real. I was like, there's no way it's that easy.
Yeah.
Like, I would get down and I'd be like, Lord, like, just save me, and I'd be like, that wasn't real. Like, I keep messing up. Like, there's no way this is how it works. Like, I need you to save me again.
Yeah.
And I told my pastor about it, and he was like, Jenna, like, I need you to be for real. Like, this is not every week kind of thing. Like, you are saved.
Yeah.
And so I just remember getting on my knees in my bedroom being like, this is the last time I'm going to ask you to save me. Like, after this, like, I'm saved. Like, we're done. Like, I'm not asking anymore. And so that was it. And from that point forward, I was like, I'm saved. Like, I'm going to live my life for the Lord. And, like, I guess that's my testimony, but I don't know. Like, faith from that point on was just kind of, like, easy for me. Like, there was nobody to really challenge me until I, like, found like all the community and like started going to a church that like had what I needed. Yeah. Which is the church I'm at now. And it was probably like beginning of last year, I went through probably the most horrific season of my life. Like, I was so miserable. I hated my job. My relationship's falling apart. I was so insecure in my friendships. Like, waking up in the morning just felt pointless. Like, it was so terrible. And I had never experienced anything like that, like, since following the Lord. I was like, man, life with the Lord is just easy. Like, it's just how we do. Like, this is going to be the rest of my life. Like, it's never going to be hard again. Yeah. And it was just, like, rock bottom. Like, started failing my classes. Like, what's my worth anymore? Like, I'm not smart. Who am I? Like, whatever. And I would sit in our life group and be like, I'm miserable. I hate waking up in the morning. I think God hates me. And I'm not good enough. And, like, just so much stuff. Like, I was believing so many lies. And it went on like that for probably 6 months. Like, I just was so miserable. And I was like, God hates me and doesn't want to do anything good for me anymore. I'm done talking to God. I showed up to church out of obligation. I felt like I had to. And it took all the way up to church camp. I went, once again, out of obligation. I was like, if I don't go, like, people are going to ask why, and I don't want to have to explain this whole story of, like, hey, I'm miserable and I kind of hate God, LOL. So, I went to camp, and, like, I can't even describe it. Like, it's so hard to describe the things that the Spirit can do within you. Yeah. But, like, I sobbed every single day at camp, and it was, like, sorrow, like, melting off of me. Wow. Like, it was, like, it just escaping my body. Like, I haven't cried in that way ever in my life. Like, not before that, not since then. And it was just, like, sorrow exiting so joy could come in. Wow. Like, good. I think about that all the time. Like, it was so transformative, not because of the camp or because of the people, but because the Spirit showed up and met me there because I needed Him to. Yeah. And it was, like, miraculous. Mm-hmm. Like, I would just sob every single day because I felt so seen by the Lord. It was like, this thing that you thought I forgot about, I didn't forget. I didn't forget you here. You're not forsaken. Like, all these things. And so my testimony is, like, going from being an absolute atheist to, like, the Lord chasing me down. Like, that's insane in itself. But then also it was literally, like, almost giving up on my faith and the Lord saying, hey, I'm not done. Like, I'm still here for you. Like, I haven't left you. And so after that, it was, like, cool, break up with my boyfriend, everything in friendships changes, like, literally 180 in my life. Yeah. And I mean, not that things haven't been hard since then. Like, life is still hard and still has its battle, but, like, it's been a year of just, like, truly knowing what it's like to sit with the Lord and, like, truly knowing, like, what does it mean to let the joy of the Lord be my strength and, like, really walking in faith even when things are hard, and just recognizing that, like, joy is not circumstantial, it's who my God is.
That's good.
And, so I feel like it's like kind of like a two-part testimony, because it was, like, testimony number one, and then, like, here was struggle, and, like, seeing God's faithfulness through that.
Yeah, that's good. And that'll be your whole life, you know,
100%.
of, like, all this happened, and then I saw God, you know, like,
right.
whether it's, like, little things, or those are, like, the biggest two that have happened so far, but, like, that'll keep happening. But I love your testimony, and I think this is funny, because you said, like, oh, we were talking before the podcast, and you were like, oh, like, I was insecure, and I was like, everybody else on here has been older than you, which that part is true, but then which holds no weight, because I'm younger than everyone else, including you. So I'm literally the youngest person to ever talk on this mic. And,
that is true.
But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, you also said, what about my story would people want to hear? And I'm in my head going, literally, question number one is, what is your story? Because your story is unique, number one. And number two, like, your story is such a testimony of the fact that the Lord will chase you down regardless of what kind of household you grow up in, like, regardless of what you know about church or what you know about God. Like, there was no reason for you to, like, find the Lord the way that you did. Like, that's just not, like, you weren't raised in a Christian household. You had never been to church before one day you just randomly decided to in the middle of the whole world falling apart. Like, that was the Lord's pursuit of you, and I just think that that's so cool, and I just want to point that out. Like, you did nothing to deserve that. No one did anything to, like, fight for you in that way. That was the Lord's pursuit of you, and I just think that is so sweet to remember. Like, when you, and then you're doubting, like, how much the Lord loves you, what you were talking about before, but, like, the Lord loved you so much. Like, it was probably more work for him to get to you than maybe someone who, like, grew up in church, but, like, he was like, no, I want her. You know what I'm saying? He left the 99 to find the one, and I love that about your testimony. There was something else I was going to say. I also love, like, how your testimony is just, you're such a vulnerable person, but also such a wise person, and I think that those two things go so hand in hand, like, because your wisdom comes from a place of experience, even though you haven't been a Christian for as long as, like, anyone else in this room. You've experienced a lot, and I love that. So that's so good. What would you say has been the most vital thing to growing your relationship with the Lord, specifically as someone coming from, like, no church background? So I really want, like, on this episode to kind of maybe help the person who didn't grow up in church and feels like, I don't even want to work in a church building because I don't know things about that. Or maybe that person who has a friend that, like, doesn't believe, and they're like, I just don't even know how to get to them. So what would you say has been the most helpful thing for you, going from not knowing anything about God, or what you do know is, like, terrible and lies, to, like, what has helped you pursue the Lord and grow your relationship with him?
Absolutely. I think the church, number one, but the people that you surround yourself with has mattered the most for me. Like, people that are wiser than me and have been in church for who knows how long, that have had these experiences that can point me to truth. And, like, having godly friends, it's like, even when I can't go home and be like, hey, here's this thing that I have going on, like, what do I do? It's like, I can go to my community, my mentors, like, all those things, and I can be like, here's what I'm struggling with right now. Like, I need you to tell me how to do this. What do I do? Like, can you pray for me? Like, navigation, like, everything. Like, without community, I don't know what I would do, you know, because it's like, when you're coming from no church background, your family can try. They can try to support you, and they can try to love you. It's not that they don't. It's just, like, they don't know how. Like, they
it's
do not
supernatural.
know,
They don't understand.
They don't know real love, like Jesus kind of love. And so it's like, I need people that do, that can love me well and see me, that can tell me the truth, not just what I want to hear. And even outside of that, like, community is so important, but also, like, prayer. Like, Lord, I don't understand anything. Either point me there myself, or point me to people that can get me there. Like, I don't know anything. I don't know, like, if somebody came up to me and asked me the gospel, I don't know what to say. Like, how do I even share the gospel to my family that doesn't know it? Like, prayer. Which is such a, like, I feel like sometimes we turn it into such a cliche answer, but is the answer to everything. So I think, like, prayer was the root of so many things when I was by myself. It was just, like, seeking the Lord and praying, like, point me to those friends that are going to build me up, that are going to encourage me and speak truth into me, that I'm going to be able to join with and do things like this, you know? Like, point me to those people, and he has. Like, even just thinking about that, like, years ago, being like, Lord, I have no friends, I have no family that really believes in you. I have nobody. It's just me and you right now, but, like, I trust that one day you're going to give me those people, and so it's like sitting here in a room full of people, in a church full of people that have done that for me. It's just, like, such a picture of the Lord's faithfulness. So I would say those things, but also, like, do not be discouraged. by having nobody. Like, I started off with nobody for probably a year.
Right.
And it's in that season that the Lord built me up so much. Like, I feel like that's where wisdom has come from experience, but also, like, wisdom came from just, like, I have nobody and nothing right now, so I'm just going to be in this word all day long.
Yeah.
Even if I don't get it, I'll sit here until I do.
Right.
Like, whatever that looks like. So I think those are the things, but the mindset also of, like, I'm not going to take this waiting period for granted.
Yeah. This made me think of that song, which I talk about a lot, but I feel like specifically I talk about a lot with you, the lyrics where it's like, you love when I'm empty.
Yes.
And it's like,
yes.
that season was so empty for you, but you were filled up so much.
Right.
Like, you had nowhere to go. It was in the middle of COVID. You really weren't talking to your old friends. You didn't have new friends because you didn't have an opportunity to meet people.
Right.
Like, you were empty.
Yes.
As far as empty can be. Like, you were empty.
Yeah.
And the Lord filled you up so much. Like, gave you such biblical knowledge and wisdom and, like, really just expanded your mind, expanded your heart. Like, I feel like he did so much in that season. And he does love when we're empty so that he can be the one to fill us up instead of all those other things we try to fill ourselves up with. Right. And I also wanted to talk about, you talked about prayer. And it made me think of David. I've been reading the Psalms, like, kind of off and on for the past year or so, like, in addition to whatever else I'm reading. And something I've learned from him is, like, the way he would approach the Lord was crazy. Like, he'd go, like, Lord, like, you're doing this, you're doing that. Yes. You haven't done this for me. You promised this, and I haven't seen it yet. Like, all these things. And he was just so honest with the Lord. He'd be like, Lord, I'm about to give up on this, like... Or he'd be like, hey, I screwed up. Like, please don't take the Holy Spirit from me. Like, please help me. Or, like, help your people. Or, like, we've been so disobedient, but I promise we're going to be obedient. Please just help us out. Like, he just ran to the Lord with every emotion. And that's something that I've really, like, tried to take in for myself, which kind of reminded me of what you were talking about with prayer. Is, like, to the person, no matter where you are in your journey with the Lord, like, prayer is so important. And just being able to, like, come to God and be like, hey, I don't understand your word at all. Can you please help me? Or, like, I'm really frustrated with the fact that this relationship didn't work out. Like, all of those things, I think that's such a good thing with prayer. And I also wanted to point out, do you want to talk a little bit about, like, what, for your Bible study, you were talking about, like, not understanding Scripture, especially coming from, like, an atheist household. So what do you use to help you understand Scripture? Because I think that's really important to people who are just starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. When I read Scripture back then, the answer was nothing, which is why I didn't understand anything. Like, I would just kind of go off my own understanding, which is funny because it says in the Word not to do that. So I would just kind of guess. Yeah. But now, there are things that, I mean, just as time goes on, you start to understand more things that are in other places. Like, time does help, but, I mean, in the right then and there, I use Enduring Word. It's a commentary. If you know me, you're probably tired of those words coming out of my mouth. But I really do love it because it's like, and it doesn't have to be that one. Like, there's so many commentaries and resources. Like, I definitely don't know all of them, but, like, I love commentary because I'll read that and I'll be like, what does that even mean? Or, like, what is that reference? Or even if I think I understand it, that's when it really gets me. Is when I think I understand it and I'm, like, write my little notes and I read it and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like,
that was so much deeper than I thought.
Right. Yeah. Like, that connected to this and this connects to him and her and whoever else. And, like, it just makes me think of things I never would have thought before. Like, it challenges me. It's like pastors on there just, like, going through stuff. And it, like, there's questions on there sometimes that are, like, I feel like I'm being preached at. I'm like, dude, I'm convicted right now. Like, whatever. It's so challenging. But also, like, when I was younger, I would do a lot of devotionals. My mom loved to give me a devotional book. Like, I will say, like, she loves to support me in what I'm doing, even if she doesn't agree or want to herself. So she's like, I got this devotional for you. And so I'd, like, look through. And those are cute, too. Like, especially if you're, like, young in your faith, I would say. Because I was, like, 15 years old. Like, it's not super young, but I was, like, naive and not super mature. So I was, like, maybe Enduring Word doesn't make sense to me or, like, whatever. Like, my mom has tried it and she's like, it doesn't make sense, like, these words that they use, like, I don't understand that. I'm like, fair. So devotionals has helped, like, reading this with this book, like the scripture here and there and stuff like that. And also just, like, being willing to ask questions. Like, I mean, not that I have somebody with me every single time, but, like, sometimes I'll Google stuff and try to find a trusted source. I mean, that can be tricky, but, you know, do your best. Or, like, even ask your pastor, your mentor, a friend that is wiser than you, that knows more than you, like, whatever. Like, asking people, like, hey, I read this the other day and it didn't make sense. Like, here's what I think about this, but, like, what do you think about that? And I think all that really helps. Yeah, I agree. I remember this now, and when you were telling your testimony in my head, I was like, wow, like, it's so... I think as someone who grew up in the church and, like, grew up in a Christian household,
for me it was like, well, everybody knows what grace means, or like
Right.
everybody knows what salvation is,
Yeah.
or like just different things like that. And then you talk to somebody who like does not come from a Christian background at all, and you're like, oh, wait a second, like I really
Right.
got to break this down. And I think sometimes we, like, as we mature in our faith, we forget that like that's where people are. And so I want to make sure that like we're not missing those people or
Yeah.
making them feel dumb.
Right.
Like, because I think sometimes it slips our mind so that it makes them feel like, gosh, everybody else knows this and I don't. But I think it's so easy to pick this word up and be like, open it up and have no idea what's going on,
Right.
especially like, I don't know, if you're in Isaiah reading prophecies and you don't even know what prophecy means, then how are you supposed to understand that?
Right.
And so I think it's important to talk about that and to help people figure that out, because like I've had several of our like youth students texting me lately, which I love, and it's like, hey, I read this today, like, can you explain what this word means in this context? And I love it.
That's awesome.
And it also gives me an opportunity to learn sometimes.
Right.
But I love the commentaries too. Like, I love to use that. And like you said, even if it's something so simple that you understand, like, at least on the surface level, sometimes you can look at the commentary and be like, oh my gosh, like, there's so much more there. Or, like you said, those questions, like, it'll ask you questions sometimes, like, are you doing this? Or are you, like, applying this to your life, like, more specifically? But then I'm like, oh, shoot. Yeah, I wasn't even really thinking about that, but no, I'm not. And so I think the commentaries are great. And also, like, obviously, it's important to make sure what you're reading is coming from truth. And, like, you definitely need to vet those sources, maybe talk to a mentor, a pastor, something like that before you just choose one. But yeah, devotionals are great too. I think that there's so many resources for people who maybe don't know how to just pick up the Bible and read it and actually understand what they're reading. So I love that. But I think also it's important to remember that the Lord will give you revelation about His Word. Like, He'll help those things make sense to you. That's why we have the Holy Spirit to, like, help us and teach us, and He's the best teacher that there is. But I think it's also good to, like, talk about that, share that with people so they know what's out there for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you mentioned, like, younger people, because I feel like that's such my passion in, like, youth ministry, is that I don't want that kid that doesn't come from a Christian home or doesn't understand to be discouraged, because that was me for so long. I was like, I'm smart in every other area. Like, I was that kid, like, gifted, whatever. And I was like, this does not make sense to me. Like, I can't figure that out. Like, I can't crack this code on my own. And so sometimes I would pick it up for like 5 minutes, because if you're trying to be a Christian, especially if you have Christian family members, or you're like in a church where people are speaking into you, it's always like, read your Bible. Like, you have to read your Bible. That's what you have to do. And so I'm like, okay, I have to do this. If I don't, then that's bad. But also, it's not enjoyable to read this because it makes no sense and it makes me feel stupid. So I'm just going to pick this up for 5 minutes a day and check it off the list, and I'm going to put it down because this makes me mad. And so it was like, I had a really complicated relationship with the Bible for a long time, because I was like, I want to learn, but I feel like what I'm doing isn't right. And so I just want kids to know that, like, you're not alone in that. And not even kids, like adults. Like, my mom has that struggle. She's like, I don't understand this. And I'm like, that is okay. Like, I don't care if I'm at college 3 hours away. Call me on the phone. I'll walk out of this class right now to explain this word to you. Like, I just want people to understand the word, because I didn't, and I was too embarrassed to ask for help, and it's not embarrassing.
Yeah, and that takes humility, which you kind of talked about that earlier, but, like, it takes humility to ask those questions. Like, we were even talking about that in my car the other day. I was, like, telling y'all about something, and it's, like, it takes humility to learn, because in order to, like, learn, you have to admit that you don't already know. And I think sometimes we feel like we should already know, or, like, I've been a Christian for this long, so I should understand this, or whatever. But the reality is, like, I can read this entire Bible every day for the rest of my life, cover to cover, and on the last day that I breathe this air, I'm still going to be learning from it. And that's reality. And so I should constantly be learning, but that, again, like, it takes humility. It takes realizing, like, okay, there's still more for me to learn. Like, there's still people in this world who know things about Scripture that I don't. There's still people in this world who can tell me something about the Lord that maybe I didn't ever realize for myself. Like, and that's so important, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And so that's something that I've been convicted of within the past year, like, going off to school and, like, hearing new perspectives and, like, just talking to people who are in different places in their faith. But, like, that humility is so important. So I love that, like, you talked about that. I think that's so good. Okay, what else do we have? Was there a moment for you when your faith became more than just a part of your life? Because I'm sure for a while it was, like, kind of straddling the fence or whatever, and not just something, like, you did, like, every now and then, but, like, actually became, like, this is the most important thing in the world to me. was that, like, a specific moment or just, like, a gradual...
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on it a little bit, but it was after my, like, 6-month suffering breakdown.
Yeah.
But especially, like, that summer was great. Like, that was really, like, experiencing true freedom and true joy. But then it's like I got to college, and it was like, okay, now I'm leaving my church, and I'm leaving these friends, and I'm leaving what's comfortable, and I'm leaving what I'm used to. And it was, like, a whole new territory. And so I've said this to a lot of people, but, like, those 4 months of first semester of college were life-changing. Like, that was the moment where I was like, right now, Jesus is all I have.
Yes.
Like, I have a roommate that I like a lot, but, like, we're not tight like that. Like, I have a Bible study, but we're not close yet. Like,
yeah.
I have these people that are supposed to be mentors, but I don't really trust them yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just, like, me and the Lord against the world. And I went to the Lord for everything. And it was, like, that became my life. Like, I was like, I gotta pray about it. I'm stressed out, let me pray. Like, I was writing out prayers. Like, I was going to the Lord for everything. Like, it became, like, who I was. And so, that was definitely the moment. I feel like, unfortunately, I've kind of shied away from that because I feel like I got comfortable.
Right.
But that was definitely the moment, and I feel like I'm always working to get back to that point.
I feel the same way. Like, the first little bit of college, I was like, I have nothing, but I have Jesus. So, and it was absolutely amazing. And, like, the Lord had given me that word that, like, you're going to have a season alone with me this year, like, at my feet. And that was 100% it. And that's why I love the song, I Was Locked on the King.
Yes.
And it's just, like, I totally get you. Like, that's exactly where I was, too. I think that sometimes big changes like that can be so scary because we're like, I might not have biblical community, or I might not have these good influences that I have people pouring into me. But in reality, again, that was like, it emptied us out and made us, like, only be filled up by Him. And I think that was so good. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, approval addiction, because I think that's something we both walked through, especially in high school with grades and stuff, but I think that the Lord has given you really good insight and wisdom in that situation, again, because of, like, the experience and what you've walked through. So I want you to talk about, like, just share with them, like, your story with approval addiction, where that started, and kind of where you are with that today.
Yeah. Like you said, in high school, going even back before that, when I was 8 years old, I got put in AIG, which is, like, gifted kids. I was gifted from a really early age, and so I would go in, like, different classrooms, and, like, I would win awards. Like, I remember, like, in elementary school, we would have awards day, and I would not get off that stage. Like, every time I wanted to put something down, I would be back up there, and I lived off of that because it's like people were so proud of me. I got so much attention. And it just became the expectation. Like, that became the bar. Like, if Jenna Mason's not getting awards on what's going on, like, the whole world is caving in. And so I carried that through middle school and high school, and then, you know, in high school you have GPA, class rank, whatever. And so the expectation was, you're going to be number one, obviously, because we don't settle for less here. And I, like, everything I did was for that goal. I was like, I have to be the best. Like, if I'm not the best, then, like, what's even the point? Like, there's no such thing as number 2, number 3. Like, that makes me a loser. And if I'm not smart, who am I? Like, that was my whole identity. Like, when I wasn't in school, I felt like I had nothing. I felt lazy, and so I took summer classes every summer of my life because I was like, I hate not being in school. It makes me feel like a loser, basically. And so I even throughout senior year, like, I took 5, 6 classes when I was supposed to take 4. Like, I never gave myself any free time. I would miss church to take a test and do whatever else to study and do this assignment, whatever. And it really kind of fell apart. Like, that was fine for a long time. Like, I did it and I was successful, and so people were proud of me. Like, I was on track to be number 1. Like, everything was going great. And then I got to my second semester of senior year, and everything just, like, fell apart. Like, I was only taking 4 classes, which is really the funny part, but they were, like, all college, like, type classes, and they all started all at once. And 2 weeks later, I was failing every single one. Every single one. I've never failed a class in my life. Like, I've never.
I don't even remember that you were failing.
Yeah, I was ashamed. So I
remember that, like, I literally thought you had, like, an 85, but I did not remember you actually, like, failing those classes.
No, I definitely had, like, 60s in all my classes. It was so bad.
Wow, I did not remember that.
Yeah, it was terrible. Like, I would take a test. I would cry the entire day leading up to the test. I would cry while I took it, and then I would cry afterwards because I failed it. It was so miserable. I had never, like, seen a B on a report card before, and I was like, I'm going to fail every single class right now, and I'm like, what does that mean for my GPA? Like, I'm not going to be number one anymore. Like, I am so dumb. Like, I can't believe it. I had to drop one of my classes, and I thought the sky was caving in. Like, I had never been like, I can't do this before. Like, it sounds so dramatic, but I had never been like, I can't do it. Like, I had just done everything and taken it on, and I was like, this is so easy, I can do this, like, whatever. And I just had to sit down and be like, I literally cannot do this. Like, I can't do it anymore. Like, I'm going to fail every class if I don't, like, drop one. And so I struggled through that whole semester. I probably cried every single day. Every single day. Because I always had something to do, and it was so hard. Like, I would sit and study for, like, 6 hours to get, like, 75s. I remember I got an 80 on one of my tests, and it was, like, the highest one I made, and I jumped up and clapped. Like, I was so excited, and a year before that, I would have been like, wow, this is
crying
rock
about
bottom.
that.
Yeah. And so, through that kind of gave a little bit of freedom.
Yeah.
Just, like, literally that being my best and that all I was being capable of. And, I finished out the year, and, like, everything was fine. Like, I still passed all the classes. Like, it wasn't that serious. But I remember being on stage, and I ended up being number 2 in my class. Boo, who cares? But I, like, got my medal, gave my speech or whatever, and I was like, as long as I get to give my speech, and I just, like, people just clap for me, and, like, at least I did it, like, everything will be fine. Like, it'll all have been worth it. And I remember just, like, sitting in the car after graduation that day, and I have never felt more empty in my life. Like, I felt nothing. And I was like, that's it. Like, that's it. Like, that's what I fought so long for. That's what I sobbed for. That's what I competed with my friends for. Like, that's what I, like, pushed friendships to the side for. That's what I gave up godly community for. That's what I gave up church for. Like, I risked everything for that. And I was like, it was not worth it. It was not worth it. Like, immediately, it didn't take but 5 minutes on the other side of it to be like, that was not worth it.
Yeah.
And I would never do it again. And if I could go back, I would never do that. Ever, because it just wasn't worth it. And so from that really shifted my perspective, because I was like, I spent so much time being miserable for what?
Yeah.
Like, it just wasn't worth it. I missed so much. Like, I could have had so much, like, intimacy with the Lord, connections with friends. Like, there's so many things that I could have had, but I gave that up for that.
Right.
And so going into college, I was like, I will not do that again. And I don't. Like, it's so cool. Because I care. I do care. Like, I believe in doing things with, like, excellency and, like, doing my best. Like, that's honorable and that's biblical. Right. Like, I believe in that. But it's not my identity. Because I was like, who cares? You know how many people ask me about my GPA? 0.
Right.
0%. I've never been asked.
Yeah.
Since I graduated.
I think one person at school knows my class rank from high school, and that's my roommate. So.
No, literally. Yeah. Literally, same. And so, it's just been so freeing. Like, there's so many, like, pockets of freedom that I've experienced in the last year, but that's a big one. Yeah. Like, I walk to take a test, and I feel like I'm on a cloud. Like, I don't feel anxious about it. I leave, and even if I guessed the whole way through, I'm like, well, it's going to be fine. Yeah. Even if I fail this class, like, I think freedom really... Like, I really saw how freed I was from it this last semester. It feels so silly to even talk about. That's how I know I'm free from it, because it was my whole life, and now I can't even believe I talk about it. But I was in an organic chemistry class, and I was like, I'm just going to get a B+, and I just don't care. Yeah. Like, that's, like, I settled with that, and then I didn't get a B+ anyway. And it's just, like, it's been so crazy to see that I stopped caring so much, and the Lord has shown up so much. Like, I make way better grades now than I ever did before, and I used to try 10 times harder.
I have noticed the same thing. Yeah.
So it's just like, the Lord will make a way. Like, I could have had that before, literally, if I would have been like, Lord, I'm giving this up. Like, if you want me to come and do whatever, like, this for this ministry, or if you want me to stop studying for this test right now, read my Bible, like, I'll do it. I don't care. And it's like, I make way better grades now than I ever did before. So I'm just so grateful that the Lord put me through that season. That was miserable, and I hated it in the moment, and I was like, this is the worst thing ever. But it launched me to here. Like, I needed that, so the Lord could be like, hey, this does not matter at all. Please stop focusing on this, because this will crush you.
Yeah. And it's not even really that he put you through it. Like, you chose that. No. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was like choosing Jenna's will over the Lord's will. And then he was like, but still, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to make you better for that.
That's good.
So I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
But I've definitely, experienced that too. And it's been crazy because I hope I haven't already said this on a different episode, but, like, I very much, like, I realized it, like, maybe end of sophomore year, at least end of junior year, that I was like, oh, I actually don't care about this as much as I used to. And it actually really doesn't matter that much. Right. And so I was number 1 until, like, the semester before the last semester, and then all of a sudden I wasn't anymore.
Yep.
And I was like, I actually don't care.
Yeah.
I remember walking in our counselor's office. She was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I really don't care."
Wow.
And she was like, "Really?" And I was like, "I don't care."
Yeah.
And I said, I'm about to cry because I'm not crying. Like, I'm about to cry out of gratitude that this just happened to me and I don't care. Whereas, like, a year, 2 years ago, this would have ruined my life.
Yep.
And so I've been kind of on the other side of that for a little bit. But in school, it happened to me twice. Once first semester, once second semester, where I feel like the Lord was asking me to do something for Him the night before a big test that I really had to study for. Both times in the class that I was, like, most on the cusp of, like, an A and an A minus or whatever. And both times I was like, all right, I guess I'm just going to spend time with you. And, like, but the coolest thing is, and what I've learned, is, like, when we're walking in God's will, we're also walking with His provision. Yeah. When we're walking in our will, we're going out from underneath that covering, and we no longer get to walk in that confidence.
Right.
But when I'm walking in His will, this is my confidence.
Right.
The Lord is my confidence, not me, because I didn't give myself the ability to be able to take that class in the first place.
Right.
Like, I didn't give myself the ability to understand. And so if He can give me the ability to understand by reading a textbook that some people don't have, like, some people don't have that, He gave it to me, then He can give me that same knowledge without me ever reading the textbook.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
He is so much bigger than that. And just learning that, like, even if I'm sacrificing what is in the world's eyes the best way to do it for the sake of being in His will, I'm also walking in the confidence that this is what the Lord wanted. So either I'm going to make the grade I need to make to be able to get into grad school, or I'm not going to get into grad school because I was never meant to. And never once do I have to question whether or not I should have done something better, whether or not I should have worked harder for that grade, whether or not I should have skipped out on church so that I could do it, because I know that I was in the Lord's will. And so whatever happens is His will, because I was obedient the whole time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that just gives you a whole different kind of confidence to be able to walk into a test going, I didn't study last night, but I do know that I did what the Lord asked me to do last night. And oftentimes, like I said, that only happened once a semester. Like, you do still have to work hard. Like you said, like, it is biblical to work hard at the things you do, to do all things with excellence for the glory of God. But it also, sometimes He's asking you, hey, I need your excellency to be moved to this area right now. And that's what's more important to me for the sake of my kingdom. And so if me getting into grad school and me spending time having a deep conversation with a girl, if this is more important, then that's what I'm going to do. And so I think just learning that when I'm working so hard to do it on my own, the confidence is in me. And that's going to fail. You know, like, that confidence that semester where you finally hit your breaking point, it was in you, and that's why it failed. But if it was in the Lord, it never would have shaken. You know what I'm saying? That is so cool to me. That's just been, like, the biggest thing I've learned through that is, like, just what it's like to have confidence in Him. Because I think, especially as girls, we go through our life going, like, oh, I need to have more self-confidence. I need to really be able to look at myself in the mirror and be happy with what I see. But it's like, you don't need more confidence in Jenna. I don't need more confidence in Caroline, because we are broken. We are sinful. We are going to mess up. Like, I'm not worthy of having confidence in myself. There's only one person worthy of me having confidence in them. And to get to walk under that covering is crazy. Like, and like you said, you were like, I've had such better grades since like, giving it to Him.
Literally.
That's so good. So what would you say to the person listening who's dealing with that right now, whether it be with grades or just, like, in friendships and, like, trying to do everything for the approval of other people? What would you say to the person? And maybe they do have, like, genuinely, like, people putting pressure on them. Like, they didn't just give it to themselves. Maybe their parents are like, you have to do this. You have to get into this school. What would you say to that person?
I would say that you are not bound by other people's expectations.
That's good.
Like, those expectations are not getting you to heaven. That success is not fulfilling you. It's not going to. I think that sometimes, especially when there is pressure, we just convince ourselves that it will, because we think, well, all these people will be so proud. But that's going to run out. Like, even if your parents are so proud of you being number one, they're not going to talk about that until you're 50 years old. It's going to run out. And then what? You have to keep leveling up and doing more things and more things and more things just to get this little ounce of pride and proudness, is that even a word? I don't know, but like to get people's encouragement and praise, you have to keep doing more and more, and at the expense of what? Like for me, it was at the expense of my mental health. Like I was miserable. It was at the expense of friendships and my relationship with the Lord. Like it was literally at the expense of everything. Like I had given up everything, and if it doesn't happen when you're in the midst of school and grades, it's going to happen later on in life. Like at some point, you will give up everything, and you will have nothing at all. And so it's hard for me to just be like, well, just stop doing that and do the other thing, because it's hard to see the other side of that. But I am telling you, from somebody that's on the other side, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it, and you don't have to live in that. Like it's okay to say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't want to. It's not fulfilling. And once again, prayer. Like I had to pray so hard. Like even going into school, I was like, I feel like I've been freed from this, but I could so easily step right back into this, Lord, and be like, I have to be perfect, and I have to make straight A's, and I have to do all these things, because those pressures are still there. They don't just go away. Like the expectation is still there. And so it's been a lot of prayer before. Like I pray on the way to every test. I pray on the way back. I look crazy, probably, but I do it, and I'm like, Lord, like, what I do in here does not matter in heaven. It's not eternal. And that doesn't just go for school. That goes for if you work a job. That goes for, I don't know, literally anything else. Yeah. Literally anything else. That people's opinions, like if you're walking into a hangout with somebody and you're like, I have to make them like me, pray on the way there. Go to the bathroom in the middle and pray. If you're like, I'm performing right now, like whatever it looks like constantly inviting the Lord in to stop you from doing whatever that looks like. Yeah. That has made all the difference for me, because it's like I've set myself up walking into that. Like I already talked to the Lord about it, and it's like, it sounds so silly, but like I'll be sitting in a test and I'm like, the Lord's hand is on my shoulder right now. Like what I do in here doesn't matter. And so I walk in and I sit down and I do what I do, and I'm like, even if that went terribly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for heaven. And just like you said, like if you're worried about grad school, college, getting that job, like if you don't get it and you're following the Lord's plan for your life, then you were never meant to have it in the first place, and what He's going to give you is going to be better. 100%.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. I think that like that's something that so many people struggle with, even if they don't notice it. Yeah. Like it might take a whole lot of it building up before they ever even notice it, but I think that's such good advice. And like I've been saying this a lot lately, I feel like, but like prayer changes the atmosphere. Every place you walk in, every situation, like prayer truly changes the atmosphere, especially when you invite the Holy Spirit in to whatever it is you're doing, because like He is like outside of anything we can possibly understand. And so when we're inviting Him in to our tests, things can happen that we don't understand. When we invite Him into like a group hangout, that like insecurity, that social anxiety that you always feel, like it can be gone. And that's it, the end. Like, and so I think I love that you said that about prayer, because like you said before, like it can become a cliche answer, but it's not. It's not just that. It's like 100%. It truly like changes the atmosphere of the ground that you walk on. Like it's crazy. So I love that. I think it's so good. Okay. We both just finished our first year of college. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I kind of said it earlier, but like that can be such a scary season to walk into, and this episode will probably be going out towards the end of the summer. So I figured this would be like a good time to talk to people maybe who are going in to college, or maybe they're going into high school, or maybe they're going into middle school, or whatever it is. So what would you say is the biggest thing that you learned, or like the biggest area you grew, whether it be with the Lord or just like in your life over the first year of school?
Yeah. I think kind of two things that tie together. Like, it's okay to miss out. Yeah. And it's not okay to pretend to be something I'm not, to fit into a box or a situation or a group. Like, wow. I think sometimes at the beginning of college, like, I would be sitting in my Bible study, and the Lord has transformed it so much. I'm so grateful. But I would be sitting there and I would be like, I feel like I should speak right now, like, this girl's talking more than me, and, like, I didn't say enough, like, they're not going to know that I, like, really care about the Lord, like, whatever. And I was like, if I say this, are they going to think I'm weird? Like, I'm a crier. If I cry right now, am I going to, like, get that label? Like, what does that mean, you know? Or she's told this story, she has this testimony, like, that's whatever. Like, so much comparison, I think, can come into that. And so it's, like, walking into new seasons of life, like, you don't have, it doesn't change who you are, like who the Lord has made you to be. Like, I think sometimes we think, like, new place, new me. I have to take on whatever this is. Like, I have to put that on. And you really don't. Like, if you are confident in who the Lord has created you to be and you're walking in obedience, like, you don't have to walk into a new place and change everything about that.
Yeah.
Like, yes, make new friends and, like, yes, be open and be, like, flexible, but don't transform into whatever it is, like, whatever environment that you're walking into. I think that was a big one for me. Like, I felt so much pressure to become something that I wasn't. I know I just said something else. What was the first thing that I said? What was that? I got so caught up on not becoming somebody else.
It's okay to miss out on things.
Yes, there it is.
I totally lost it.
No, I was like, I really got passionate about not becoming somebody else, and I was like, what did I even say? Yes, be okay with missing out. That's been a problem for me my whole life. Like, this could be a word for somebody that's not walking into something new, honestly. It's still a word for me now, but, like, it's okay to not go to every single thing. Me and my roommate had conversations about that a lot. Like, she'd be like, I feel like I have to go to everything. Like, if I don't show up, then, like, I'm not going to make this connection, and they're going to be friends, and they're going to be closer than I am with this person, and whatever. And I was like, hey, that's all right. I was like, even if it's not, like, a God thing, like, sometimes it could be the Lord is saying, hey, stay with me, but sometimes it's just, I'm tired, dude. Like,
or you have schoolwork.
Literally, like, especially if you're starting college, like, that's such an insane time of, like, it's syllabus week, but if you know, that really doesn't exist 90% of the time.
Whoever said that?
That is fake unless you're, like, some crazy major. I don't know. Like,
I don't know.
No hate to business majors. If you're, like, my boyfriend and you're a business major, then maybe. But that was for Luke.
Construction manager.
Anyway, no, literally. Like, I'm not hating. If you're a business major out there, I really do love you.
I'm glad you'll get to play spike ball. You're doing it for the rest of us.
Yeah. But anyway, but that's not a real thing. So it's like you're busy and you're like trying to make all these connections. You want all these people to like you, like whatever. It's so much. Like, it's so exhausting. Like, I would come back and I would just sit and I would be like, I need to sit here for hours and just stare at the ceiling. Like, I'm so tired of being like, what's your name and what's your major and where are you from and where do you live? Like, whatever. It gets so exhausting. And so I think we, like, run ourselves ragged, just like, I have to do this, I have to be here, because if not, then what does that make me look like? And I'm missing out. Like, it literally doesn't matter. Like, I missed out on so much stuff, and there are girls that are closer with each other than I am because of it, and, like, sometimes I feel like I'm in my own isolated little bubble, but it's like, who cares, man? Like, I was sitting with the Lord, like, hardcore, and, like, maybe they were too, but, like, I don't know. That's not my problem, and I don't care. And so I would just say, like, especially if you're going into college and even high school too, like, you don't have to show up to every single thing, like, just because you feel like you have to. You don't have to become who people want you to become. Like, sit with the Lord and be who He made you to be.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good, because that's with the Lord is where you're gonna find out who you were meant to be. So that's
correct.
good. I relate to that so much. We've never talked about that, I don't think, but, like, I relate to that so much because my roommate, she just didn't have work. Like, she just didn't. And I'm so happy for her. And it was so great for her. But, like, I did. And so I know she'd be bored, like, if she didn't have somebody else to hang out with, because I had work to do. But, like, I would feel like, oh my gosh, like, she got lunch with this person and dinner with this person, and I made these meals in my room, or, like, I couldn't go when they went, or whatever. So I relate to that on such a deep level.
Yeah, for sure.
The next question I want to ask is, what challenges, like, new challenges did being in college bring for you, and what new opportunities did it bring for you? I feel like so often we talk about, like, prepare for this, like, this is going to happen, or whatever, but I also want to talk about, like, there were so many good opportunities for me, so I want to talk about both sides of that.
Yeah, 100%. I'll start with challenges. Obviously, there's so many challenges going into college, especially when you're, like, established with the church. Like, I've been coming here for a while, I serve, like, my friends are here, my people are here, like, I was so rooted here, and so leaving was horrifying. I was so scared. And when I got to college, I was like, it's going to be fine, because, like, week one, I'm just going to find my church, like, the Lord's just going to hand it to me, and that did not happen. I went to a different church every week for 6 weeks, and I cried after every single one, because I was like, wow, this sucks. Like, not the church sucked. Like, the churches were good, but I knew they weren't where I was meant to be. Like, it didn't feel right in my spirit. And I was like, am I ever going to feel right here? And then I was like, did I even pick the right college? Like, am I never going to feel right here? Like, what if I messed up? I think there's just so much unknown, and especially if you're following the Lord, you're like, well, what if I messed up? And what if I didn't do this right? Like, that was one of my biggest challenges at the beginning, was, like, finding community. Like, everybody felt, like, weirdly distant. I didn't know how to connect with people, and then finding a church was so difficult. But when I found a church, like, so many opportunities opened up. When I found my community, like, that opened up so many opportunities. Like, I found my ministry, and it's so crazy because I would go to, like, my Bible study, and I would be, like, cowering in the corner in fear to speak, which is so not me. Like, I'm so, like, outspoken. Like, here, I would just talk all day long, and, like, I'm speaking over you, and I'm praying over you, and stuff like that. And then it's, like, I was sitting in the corner there, like, rocking back and forth.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to pray? And I'm like, not me. Like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to whatever. And so, fast forward to now, and it's like, now I'm in a lead a study, which is so crazy. Like, I just didn't see that happening. I was like, maybe this ministry isn't for me, and maybe actually none of these people are for me, and maybe I should drop out and never come back to school again. And so that's been really cool. And then finding my church has opened up so many opportunities with just, like, people. Like, I've gotten to talk to so many people that, like, I actually knew before, and now I get to know them in a whole other capacity,
that's good.
Which is so cool. And serving there has been so cool. Like, I do kids here, and I do kids there, and they are the same, but so different.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's just, like, it's opened up a whole new world for me, because things here, like, doing kids was stepping out in faith for me. Like, I had never done kids before, but doing kids there was, like, I wasn't comfortable with anybody yet. Like, I started, and I was there for, like, a month or two, and I was like, all right, let's just hit the ground running. Like, I'm doing this. Like, this is still my calling here, so I'm going to go. And it's like I got to know the kids, like, before anybody else. So it's like some of my best friends in that church are 6.
Right, and you don't even know whose parents.
No, I don't know. Like, they could walk past me, and I would just be like, I'm like, oh,
yes,
they're kids.
It's
like,
so weird.
Literally, because like here it was so opposite. It was like I knew this adult, and they were like, here's my kid.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just been like I've learned so much through kids, like through them, and just like through getting prepared to lead a study, and like through being in a whole new ministry, and like I've learned the importance of prayer, and just like so much stuff, like things that I don't know, in the past I wouldn't have looked at them as like opportunities, because to me an opportunity is like a job, like it's big, it's huge, it's like in your face, but like there have been so many like personal opportunities for me in college that have been so cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, again, like the same as you, finding a church and a biblical community was the scariest thing, but and I was always like, my church is the best church. Like, no church is ever going to measure up. And it's like, now I love both. And when I'm here, I kind of miss my church there. And when I'm there, I really miss my church here. And so it's just like, oh.
It's crazy.
Like, it's crazy, but that just shows the Lord's faithfulness. And, like, He's doing these amazing things all over the place. Like, not just over our state, but over our country and the whole world. So it's like, I learned so much, and I feel like I grew so much. Throughout my first year of school as well, so that's really good. Okay, what advice, this is going to be the last question, what advice would you give to a person who's starting in college and is worried about how they're going to continue to pursue Jesus? Like, how am I going to find my biblical community? Like, what am I going to do when I get there? Because I want to do the right things, but I don't know how.
Right, yeah, that's good. I would say, going back to, like, sit with the Lord. Like, sit with the Lord and pursue the Lord. You said pursue so much, and not this year, but last year, that was my word of the year, because I was so in awe of how the Lord has come after me my entire life. Like, looking back, like, even before I became a Christian, I was like, that was the Lord coming after me. When I was 6, when I was 8, when I was 10, like, whatever, like, that was the Lord coming after me. Like, He's been coming after me my whole life, even when I didn't recognize it. And so I was so, like, awestruck by the pursuit of the Lord. And so, I love that you bring that up so much, and my whole goal was, like, I want to pursue the Lord as much as He pursues me. Like, I don't even think that's possible, but I want to try. I want to get there. And so, chasing after the Lord, like, I feel like that's definitely so Hobby Lobby. Like, you chase the Lord, and whoever is with you, like, they'll whatever. Like, like, whatever that says, it's like another person should have to, like, chase the Lord too, to, like, to catch up with you, whatever. But, like, genuinely, like, if you're chasing the Lord, you'll, like, the people that are around, like, you will see, like, you will be aligned with those people. And so I spent a long time, like, the first few months, like, forcing certain things, because I was like, well, she seems like she really loves the Lord, and she seems like she would be good for me, and we seem like we would have a lot in common, so I'm just going to really force this friendship. And they didn't work out because I was forcing it. And so it was like, when I just kind of surrendered to the Lord and just not gave up, but I was like, okay, Lord, like, I'm just going to chase after you, and whoever you want my friends to be, like, that's who my friends are going to be, and if it's literally me and my roommate against the world, then that's what it is. Like, I don't care. And after that, it's just, like, one by one, like, they started to fall into place of, like, we were here together. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, we were united. It just, like, came out of nowhere. It's like the Lord just being, like, drop those people, like, in my midst. And, so I would just say chase the Lord. Like, chase the Lord with everything that you have. Yeah. And that will follow. Like, don't force anything. Don't preconceived notion, like, I saw her on Instagram before I got here and she looks like she's going to be cool. Like, you know? Like, chase the Lord and let him guide you.
That's so good. I love that. And I love to, like, it's not like, oh, just stay in your room and sit with your Bible and, like, don't talk to anybody. You're going to have to talk to people. But, like, don't force that. That's so good because I think, like, for me as well, like, the first time I walked in my church, I was like, these are going to be my closest friends of the church. Yep. They're not. Right. And it's just because, like, the Lord sees the whole picture if we don't. And so he's going to show us who we actually need in our life on a deeper level, at least. So I think that's so good and so helpful. I love that. Well, I think that's it. Yay. We're running out of time. I didn't even get through all the questions. This was so good. Thank you so much. It was amazing.
I loved it.
All right. Well, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all watching so much. And we will see you next week. Bye. Bye.